Hello, everyone, and welcome to your fourth week of technical writing. This is your first lecture, and we'll cover a little bit about ethics in technical communication. Before I jump into the presentation, I wanted to just say thanks to everyone for a really great week on the Canvas page. I particularly liked what you all came up with for the spatial orientations assignment, um, where, yeah, it sounds like a lot of you picked up the important lessons about talking to an expert audience, someone who's been to the space before, and talking to a non-technical audience and the language that has to change between them. There is definitely also some healthy pushback, I think, on how useful it is as a technical writing exercise, and I really appreciate seeing that because I know the discussions are part of your grade, so there's probably part of you that might think I have to say it's a good technical writing exercise, but I'm glad that some people push back on that a little bit. I think it's another place where we all get to learn about how people are seeing technical writing. I haven't gone through the favorite songs yet, but I'll tell you what, I'll put them all on a playlist, and I'll send it out to everybody, and I'll look forward to grading those. Even though I wasn't as lively in the discussion as I had hoped. Yeah, so let's jump into ethics in technical writing. I'm going to bring back the textbook. We haven't talked about it in a couple weeks now, I guess, because last week we went to kind of a more theoretical level, um, which you all handled really well, I thought. But yeah, let's talk a little bit about ethics. So these two quotes come right from that textbook, the free PDF one with this course. And they write two really good selections that I just wanted to build on for you. The first says, ethical behavior, including ethical technical communication, involves not just telling the truth and providing accurate information, but telling the truth and providing information so that a reasonable audience knows the truth. And so I wanted to go back to two of those original concepts of technical writing that we talked about. The first one was that good technical writing needs to be informative. And they're touching right back on that here, and they're adding a layer to that. They're saying it's not only informative, but it's informative about what the truth is. And so, and it even says here, providing accurate information that tells this truth. And so even with that, you can think about the appendixes and things like that we've seen in some technical writing where it gives you follow-up information on research or follow-up information that the writer knows about the product. And so that's all this kind of big picture about getting the truth to the audience, making sure that the truth as it really exists in the mind of the creator and the technical writer and the user are all really aligned. The other thing I really wanted you to think about when you got to this selection was the idea of persuasion in technical writing. So that's another one that was in like the very first lecture, was the idea that good technical writing can be persuasive. And so this kind of sets a good limit on what kind of persuasion technical writing should be doing. Anyone who's taken E110, which should be all of you, that's the fundamental writing course, you certainly talked about different ways of persuading an audience, whether you did that through logic and facts, whether you did it through your own authority, or whether you did it through appealing to the audience's emotions, for example. So in technical writing and in rhetoric too, but dealing with technical writing here, the boundaries on that persuasion are that you have to stay within what the truth is. And so that's why I think when we think back on those original slides, instructing and informing are first in technical writing, and persuasion's kind of last, because it's not supposed to be this tool that persuades somebody the wrong way. It's supposed to be something that's very much attached to the truth of what the product offers, what your company or what service they offers is available. And so those kind of become the limits on persuasion, is this idea of telling the truth. The other selection in the textbook that I really like, I think, and hopefully it created some thoughts for you, was this idea that ethical writing then involves being ethical, of course, but also presenting information so that your target audience will understand the relative importance of information and understanding whether some technical fact is a good thing or a bad thing. And so when I read this, again, I kind of return mentally in my mind to some of those earliest methods I taught you about technical writing, like using contrast in a text. You can use it to make particular words stand out. Whether it's bolding, whether you change the color of a font, whether you use italics. Another thing we talked about was using strong headings, and a really sensible organization of a text. But the textbook reminds us here, you are making an ethical decision also when you do those things. Think, for example, if you had to submit a report to your boss, and most of the report had bad information about the company or about the team that you're working on. Somebody who's unethical could go through that report and bold out the small pieces of good news, or could put all of the good news at the top of the report, thinking the person might not read the rest. And so those tactics and those methods I taught you, they can be used in a bad way, but as a technical writer, you are supposed to have this, fidelity to the truth, fidelity to ethics, fidelity to acting morally, however you want to describe that. And so that's why I wanted to pull these two selections out of the textbook, was just to show you sort of where the boundaries are on these ideas like persuasion, and like contrast and sensible organization and these things. You're not supposed to do it for the writer's gain. But again, we're thinking about our audience, like always in this course, right? We want the audience to pick up the truth. We want the audience to know the details, and really be able to get a clear picture of what's going on from what they see, not necessarily the picture that we want to convince them of or persuade them of. And since we've talked about it a bunch, and I usually go into this, I wanted to talk about how this goes beyond just our writing, and beyond just ordering things. There was this really important article, and I'll cite it in the description below, called "Cruel Pies." He's talking about pie charts, by Sam Dragga. I think the full title is "Cruel Pies: The Inhumanity of Technical Illustration." And so he's thinking about those illustrations, whether they're graphs, or tables that go into a technical report. And he's saying, wait a second, we have to study those too. And so he writes, indeed, we do a genuine disservice to students, clients, colleagues, and the public if we allow this limited definition of the ethics of visual communication to persist in the writing, teaching, and research we do as technical communicators. We need instead to broaden our understanding of this important subject by studying and developing a variety of techniques that will bring humanity to technical illustrations. And so humanity is kind of his big key word there. And I'll give you some examples of maybe how you can picture this. So here would be a good example of charts that Sam Dragga, who wrote that article, is talking about. Charts or tables that have very little humanity to them. And so we have one chart on the left. This is deaths during the COVID-19 pandemic. And you can see, well, you can't see because I had to crop the table, I had to crop what it means. But the lighter states are where fewer deaths occurred. The darker states are where more deaths occurred. And so I think what Sam Dragga would say, he wasn't looking at this chart particularly, his article's from about 20 years ago. But what Sam Dragga would say is this chart doesn't have a good amount of humanity, and it's not a very ethical illustration of the actual human suffering that went on during the COVID pandemic. And so all we really get is our shapes, which are the states, and then we get these darker or lighter colors. But what this chart hides, if it's presented to someone in government or someone at a pharmaceutical company, is what these deaths really meant, like how they affected families, how they affected workplaces, how they affect the individuals who suffered themselves throughout the disease. And so, yeah, that's kind of what he's talking about, is these have very little humanity to them. It's just shapes and colors. And then here would be a similar one. This is civilian and military deaths during the early stages of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And again, we have civilian deaths in one color, military and unknown deaths in another color. And again, we can kind of add these things together and find out how many people had died. But again, all we have is shapes and colors. We have very little in terms of the humanity. Like what did the suffering of this invasion look like? What was the suffering of the individual, the family? We don't know because it all gets compressed just into these, you know, better or worse illustrated tables that don't tell us anything. And so here would be an example of how to do it a little bit better. This would be a more human chart, I believe, according to Dragga. Same thing, different months for the early stages of Russia's invasion in Ukraine, where again we have shapes and different kinds of colors and the numbers. But I think these are the things that kind of humanize the chart is what's going on at the bottom. We see actual pictures of looks like ruined towns or ruined cities. And the person who takes a look at this chart instead of the other one actually gets a pretty vivid picture of the struggling that humans in that area had to go through. And so in some ways that humanizes the data a little bit better. And so that's kind of the difference that Drag is talking about is, hey, this is inhumane. We don't know anything about what really went down from these pictures, where something like this adds a little bit more context. And so he concludes by saying technical communicators schooled in rhetoric and trained in the humanities are in a unique position to help raise the level of ethics in the visual display of technical information. We know how to adapt the technical to the human. And so I wanted to kind of end his little section of this with that because a prerequisite for this course was E110, so you all have at least a little bit of a background in rhetoric. You all, if you've taken your breadth courses at the University of Delaware so far, you've certainly taken some humanities. And so I think we're the kind of writers that Sam Dragga is talking about here is we're the people who understand how rhetoric works. We understand persuasion and convincing people, and we understand the humanity behind everything because we've studied those courses that get us to think about people and empathy and the spaces around us. And so he ends with, we know how to adapt the technical to the human. So that's something you want to be thinking about. We might not have full time to practice doing humanized charts in this course, but yeah, thinking about when you're presenting data, what's the human behind the data and how can you represent it? The last little thing about ethics in technical communication I wanted to present was this list from the Society for Technical Communication. This is a society I'm part of, and they give us some ethical principles for how we're supposed to handle our practices in technical writing. And the 6 are legality, honesty, confidentiality, quality, fairness, and professionalism. Legality deals with, obviously following the established law in the region that you're operating in, but also thinking about building contracts that are ethical and legal. Honesty, in negotiations, when you're telling a client what you can do, that you're being very honest about what it is you can do, and it's not, again, like the charts, it's not obscuring any kind of humanity. You're just being upfront about what you can handle. Confidentiality, when you're a tech writer, if you're in a business or if you're sort of a kind of freelancer the way I am, you're going to come across confidential information inside an organization, and you have to be kind of prepared to deal with that, and keep things under wraps and not share what you're not supposed to be sharing. Quality is that when you say you're going to put 10 hours or 20 hours of work into a deliverable, that you actually go and you put that amount of time into it and you do your very best. Fairness deals with diversity, equity, and inclusion, that you're building fair contracts with all sorts of different kinds of people who come from different backgrounds, ethnicities, and so on. And then professionalism, I look at this one as when you're a tech writer, you are seeking feedback and you're receiving it professionally, even if it's not the feedback that you want to receive. And then the other side of the coin for that is that once you become a sort of expert in technical writing, that you're offering mentorship and you're offering to help people who are trying to enter the field behind you. So that's a nice broad overview of ethics and technical communication. I think we'll do a discussion based on Sam Dragga's information from that article. But yeah, that's your first lecture for this week, and I'll have 2 more coming for you. Thanks, everyone.